And we're back. So, I'm here with Thornton Fallander talking about surfing Japan in the 80s and 90s. You're listening to Radio 2 TLC FM, Conversations with
Thornton Fallander. And
So-
Marco.
and Marco. And what kept bringing you back to Japan year after year?
Well, I did marry a Japanese lady and had family, so that I went back. She wanted to go back every year, if we could. And I could do it. I was working, and I liked Bali. I could fly to Bali, then Japan, then back to Bali and home again. And it was cheaper than flying direct, as I mentioned before.
Thornton was telling me how it was cheaper to transit in Bali than fly direct to Japan, which is a good little lurk.
Yeah, some of the things, it's changed now.
And what work were you doing in Japan? You said
I was
you needed
shaping boards.
Shaping boards.
I did, when I lived there for the 2 years, in the winter the surfboard world stops, of course, even though you can still surf. Japan seas, it's very cold, but you can surf over there.
That's in between China and Japan.
Yeah, there's waves
So that
there.
body of water.
So
It's the winter season, so it is
Yeah.
freezing, isn't it?
the whole thing stops. But I worked. I got a job in a snow resort with my wife. That was a fantastic job. It was Niba Prince Hotel, and we'd ski nearly every day. We could ski every night, so that was a good experience. I thought I'd leave Japan, but it turned out to be one of the best experiences I had. It is a snow country.
Yeah, it is a snow country, isn't it?
Yeah, so I survived that, and then did another year back to shaping, and then after that I went to Hawaii.
So you left Japan and went to Hawaii.
Yeah,
Hawaii's actually got a strong Japanese population, doesn't it?
it does, and a lot of the Japanese go there for honeymoons, or it's a popular destination for them. They thought originally it was their island. We won't go into that.
No, that's another one. And so what are some of the other striking things you found about Japan when you thought of Japan when you got there?
Well, it's Japan. It's there's a lot of people. There's 127 million people live there. It's actually a decreasing population, but
Now it is.
which is amazing. But they're mainly in the city. Once it was more rural, but they don't earn any money. It's like what's happening in Australia now. They go to the big cities and they've exploded.
So Japan has a population about 5 times the size of Australia's in a landmass 10 times smaller. So it's
Yeah.
very crowded,
It's very crowded, but
especially if they're all moving to the city.
but you go to the country, it's quite. You would be surprised. There is a lot of forest and bush, a lot of cedar trees. They don't use their own. They use other people's, other countries'.
They like to keep their trees growing.
Yes, but they do say that it's because of the earthquakes and they won't cut them. But one wonders.
What do you mean? They won't cut them because without the trees, the earth will be less stable?
No. Well, yeah, it's holding a lot of the hills
Oh,
together.
wow.
And,
That makes sense.
With the rains they get, because every year around, I think it's June, certainly in Tokyo it's around June, you get the rainy season, but it comes up the island chain from the bottom to the top.
It's very different when you go from the north to the south. In the southern islands, it's quite tropical, isn't it?
Yeah, very hot, very tropical. Reefs, like
It's like Indonesia a little bit, isn't it?
yes, a lot like Indonesia.
However, as you travel further north, it does become quite woody, quite foresty, like Europe.
Very foresty. But there is between the cities. There is. It's just like here. There's a lot of bush. It's surprising. It's not people everywhere like you would think. There is one thing I want to mention where I used to work up in. It was Fukushima, actually, of all places.
On the Northern Island, that's where
The tsunami and
the 2011 earthquake and tsunami.
yes, with the nuclear reactor problem, the meltdown there. I used to work there, and I'd come back to Ibaragi, where my prefecture to Mito City, where my wife at the time lived, and we go through the Hitachi tunnels, and they were amazing. Now, that is something.
What are the Hitachi tunnels?
Well, they've through these mountain ranges. There's tunnels. I think you can do 100k, and you're in these tunnels for about 5 minutes doing 100k, and there's a little gap. And you go into the next tunnel, or if you think about it, it's quite scary stuff when you go there. I'm right under a mountain, and there's earthquakes, and it's exciting. It was a bit of an adrenaline rush.
There we go. So zooming through these tunnels drilled into the mountains.
Yeah, so I've got to mention that for any tourist or anyone up that way, those Hitachi tunnels, they were 15, 20 years ago. I think they were 15 years ago, the longest tunnels in the world.
So anyone travelling to Japan shortly, rent a car and go speeding through the Hitachi tunnels.
It's quite scary.
Yeah, Thornton's travel tips. And where were you staying? Where were you sleeping? I suppose you had your own place.
At different times, if I worked with someone, they usually arranged accommodation. At times I rented, different times, different periods, you did different things. At the time, it was very expensive, so it's a lot cheaper now. It's hard to believe it was so expensive.
Yes, it is. It is quite cheap.
Yeah, it was. It's like Australia is now, and it reminds me when I look back, Australia, what I see here now with the price of things and how we've gone. It is like back then in Japan.
A reversal. So
Yes,
it's as if
yes.
because I wasn't around in the 70s or 80s, but I heard that things were quite affordable
Yeah, it's
compared
very
to now.
affordable
Yeah.
here. But times change.
Yes.
Okay, do we play another song? We haven't worked one out.
Yeah. What do you reckon?
I was going to go for Jewel, but we.
Jewel, I think we can. I think we
don't know
can
if
bring
do
that up.
We could take forever. So,
No, I'm sure we can.
so if the audience can bear with us,
Why did you want to listen to Jewel?
because I like Jewel, but there we go.
What's one of the?
I don't even know. I should have done some more homework, but I did it on Japan, and
And now we're looking for songs.
there it
What
is.
about a Japanese song?
No.
What about
no,
AKB48?
That'll do. I don't even know who they are.
AKB48.
Scare me.
That's a recent pop group to come out of Japan. They have a very fascinating story.
Oh,
And
okay.
they're quite.
I hope they're worthy of listening to.
Oh, they're interesting.
Oh,
You either love them or you hate them.
okay, let's go there.
All right, here we go. AKB48 knocking on heaven's door. I don't think this is it. Yes. That wasn't AKB48 I was thinking of. This is the AKB48 I was thinking of. They're from the very recent Japanese pop group to come about. They're a little bit. They sum up the Japanese city culture a little bit. I'm sure there are many anthropological studies into this group. Like I said before, you love them or you hate them. Personally, I think they're quite bizarre. Here we go, AKB48, Baby, Baby, Baby. All right, that was AKB48 with Baby, Baby, Baby. Don't know if you really like that one.
I think it was
Thornton,
terrible.
what was wrong with it?
It wasn't my scene. It wasn't my era, and it was horrible.
If you look at the video clip, there's a bunch of Japanese girls running around in their bikinis. Not a fan?
That's why Marco likes it.
Yeah. So,
Fire away, Marco. Where are we at?
tell me about the first time you had sashimi.
Well, that was an acquired taste. It took a couple of months. I thought I was starving to death because you have to eat a lot of white rice, and sashimi is fantastic. But if you don't like it, you get used to it quick. So I was in Shikoku.
What was it like when you first saw it? What were you like when you first saw it?
Sashimi? I thought it was weird, but I got used to it very quickly. I actually love sashimi, but this place I was staying at, they'd serve the guests sashimi. Some people wouldn't eat it, and in the end, I got a taste for it, and I'd just clean it all up. It was beautiful.
So you just ate everyone's sashimi in this guest house?
Only when it came out the back.
Only when it came out the back. There we go.
I'd head out the back, as I was a long-term resident there.
Yeah, there we go. That's great.
Knew the lurks.
And what's your favourite place in Japan?
Oh, look, we've only touched on it. That first trip was quite amazing. I did from the bottom to the top of the island chain. Also did 3 weeks in Motoazabu.
Where's Motoazabu?
In Tokyo.
In Tokyo.
In the big city, just to see what the big city was like. And I did 3 in Osaka. Roppongi. Now, they used to say, Roppongi's full of foreigners. So,
Roppongi's the red light district in Tokyo.
Is it red light?
I think so. That's the reputation it has. I'm not sure if it's red light, but that's the party spot.
So,
what year are we talking?
81.
81, early 80s. All right, Roppongi, early 80s.
So we're about 500 metres from Roppongi, where we were staying. A mate of mine and myself. He'd managed to get a unit there, which was very expensive. I mean, it's a couple of grand a month. In those days, it was a lot of money.
So this is a couple of grand, 1980s dollars.
Yeah. It was big bucks. This girl he'd met was quite wealthy and went overseas, and he was minding the apartment. So he invited me up, and we had a ball. But there was no foreigners, and they all said, well, Roppongi's where all the foreigners are, and I have been back since, and it was full of foreigners, and how times changed. But then, you could spot the foreigner. There'd be 1 out of 10,000.
Yeah, there we go. What was that like?
It was a good experience, It was living in the big city and living at night. Used to sleep all day.
Not getting much surfing done in the city. I assume.
Only when the swell came up, I'd go to the coast or get out of there.
On that motorbike, you borrowed off a friend?
No, I went down to Shikoku a few times.
Yeah.
I'd be back
Did you
on the
fly
bike.
there or by bus?
That time I drove it. We flew. I've even done ferries.
Really?
Out of there, which is a good tip. If you're in Japan, you can get on the freeways. If you have to go to Tokyo, to Osaka, or to Shikoku, usually you're in Tokyo or somewhere north, you have to travel. You can get ferries, and they're the way to go because it's just as cheap, even if you've got your car. Because by the time you pay the road tolls and petrol, the ferry was cheaper, and you didn't have to drive it. It's a really
you can
good
sleep
way.
on the ferries, can't you?
Yeah, and you can have no one uses it. The locals don't. They have an onsen or a bath.
Really?
Yeah, usually you go to the bathroom and.
So you go to the sauna and the hot tub on the
there's
ferry.
usually
Wow,
a tub and.
that's
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, no one uses it. I couldn't believe it. Even if you got to pay a few bucks extra, but usually it's part of the deal.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's usually an overnight, 12, 15-hour trip, sometimes 20.
And how have you seen the country change from the early 80s when you first got there to the early 2000s when you went there last?
Over the years, I changed spots. I started hanging out in Kyushu a lot more.
Kyushu is the third biggest island. No, the third island going south.
I used to fly into there, then get the bullet train up to Tokyo. I did that for many years. It's changed. Yeah, it's changed a lot. It's the attitude perhaps has changed more.
How's the attitude changed?
I just they're more worldly or they're more open. Once they spoke no English, the Japanese in general.
This is in the 80s?
Yeah, you had to learn Japanese or you just couldn't communicate.
Your Japanese is all right, isn't it?
It was once. I'm getting older and I don't use it. The brain cells are floating away somewhere.
How long did it take you to pick up Japanese?
I studied it for quite a while. When I was working in the snow, that job, there was nothing to do in the afternoons for a couple of hours, and I just studied every afternoon for a couple of hours. And I had about 8 co-workers, and none of them spoke any English, so it was a perfect situation.
Wow, so that is a perfect situation to learn.
So I did 4 or 5 months of, quite a few hours each afternoon, and I was living it. So it makes it easier.
So the language, the worldly attitude, how else has it changed over the decades?
Well, like I mentioned, the shops in the country, I'm sure that's not the same.
No, it's not. When I was there in 2012, the shops were shut. You weren't getting in there you weren't going in there for any late night beers, that's for sure.
It's just food. It was food, usually early morning yogurt.
Yeah, that's quite astounding. They had the honesty box system with their stores.
Yeah. Gee, I rang up Japan today to ask a name. I've forgotten one of the places we used to surf. And I actually had to have a conversation in Japanese. I was ringing my mate, but talked to his wife, and she speaks no English. So
yeah, you spoke to her in Japanese.
Yeah, no, so that was a good experience.
That's great.
I was surprised I could speak.
Yeah,
I had to.
I'm happy you've still got that knowledge. So what was this beach you were calling up about?
Oh, that was at Nagata.
That was
left-handed.
Nagata, the reverse Byron.
No, reverse Noosa.
Reverse Noosa, all right.
It's very inconsistent. It might break for a week in a year.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like the reverse of Noosa at all.
No.
That's quite like Noosa.
That's correct. Okay, what's our next song?
So we've got Jewel, You Were Meant For Me.
There you go, Marco.
I hear the clock at 6 a.m. I feel so far from where I've been. I got my eggs and my pancakes too. Got the maple syrup, everything but you. I break the yolks and make a smiley face. I kinda like it in my brand new place. I wipe the spots up over me, don't leave the keys in the door. I never put towels on the floor anymore, 'cause dreams last for so long, even after you're gone. Towels on the floor anymore, 'cause dreams last for so long, even after you're gone. I know you love me, and soon you will see you were meant for me, and I was meant for you. I called my mom and she was out for a walk. Consoled a cup of coffee, but it didn't want to talk. So I picked up the paper, it was more bad news. More hearts being broken, more people being used. Put on my coat in the pouring rain. I saw a movie, it just wasn't the same. 'Cause it was happy, oh, I was sad, and it made me miss you. Oh, so bad, 'cause dreams last for so long, even after you're gone. And I know you love me, and soon you will see brush my teeth or put the cap back on. I know you hate it when I leave the light on. I pick up a cup and turn the sheets down and take a deep breath and a good look around. Put on my PJs and hop into bed. I'm half alive, but I feel mostly dead. I try and tell myself it'll be alright. I shouldn't think anymore tonight, 'cause dreams last for so long. Even after you're gone, I know you love me, and soon I know you will see you were meant for me, and I was meant for you. Yeah, you were meant for me, and I was meant for you.
And we're back. That was Jewel. You Were Meant For Me. So we're going to wind it up here. Thank you, Thornton, for coming on board. Thank you for coming to the station.
Thank you, Marco.
I really enjoyed having you here. So we had a caller in.
Robbo wanted Bondi cigars, and we were trying to check it out then, and that's when the jewel got cut in half there for a moment. Poor old jewel.
So, Robbo, we didn't forget you. We just had some technical difficulties.